Hey drummers, welcome to another video on YouTube. Before we even get started today, just keep in mind that currently at the moment it's pouring down with rain, and I'm recording this right underneath a tin roof. So if you can hear lots of rain noise in the background, that's why. It's because it's raining. Surprise, surprise. Something tells me that the drums might be a little bit louder than the rain, so hopefully that's the case. What we're doing today is actually a drum solo, a sheet called Grade 2 Drum Solo 1. Again, another really catchy title. But what it is it's a whole sheet that is just, we play from top to bottom all in one go. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to break it down into different sections. That's the easiest way to learn how to play things on any instrument, is just to break it down into little sections until you can play them all properly, and then join them all together, and then you've got a piece of music that you can play, which is quite cool. So the first section of this sheet is the first 4 lines. The second section is the next 2 lines, and then the last section is the last 2 lines. Now each line of the sheet, now I'm going to try and show you on this camera up here, each line of the sheet is split into 2 bars. There's bar 1, bar 2. Hopefully that camera is focusing on this. Bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, bar 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There is a section, there are 2 sections where we repeat. So we play the same thing twice. It's this section here. You see these 2 dots at the start here? You might not be able to see them, but you'll be able to see them on the graphic that I put up, wherever that is, over here. So hopefully, there's 2 dots at the start there, and then there's 2 dots at the end of that section as well. Now those 2 matching dots means that when we reach the end of the section where we've got the 2 dots, we go back and find the matching set of dots at the start. And then we play it. The second time we play it, we just ignore the dots and we carry on through. And then we see another set of dots down here that are in the second section. When we reach the end of those dots, we go back and play that section again, and then we continue on through. Those are what those mean, and those are called repeats, and that means we just repeat those sections that have the dots either side of them. So I'll just put that up on the stand so we are ready to go. Okay, so the first section is just using hi-hats, bass drum, and snare until we get to the 4th bar, and then we start using a tom 1 as well. So it's just 8th note hi-hats with quarter note bass drums to begin it. So it just sounds like this. Okay, it does that. So it does 1, 2, 3, and then we've got another hi-hat and bass drum, but we've also got 3 snares straight after that, 3 16th note snares to go along with the 16th note bass drum. So we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll play that again. Then you can see it does exactly the same thing the next bar. So we're still looking on the top line, 2nd bar across. 3rd bar, which is the 2nd line down the page. Same thing again. Now in the 4th bar, everything changes. Okay, so the first 3 bars are exactly the same. And then the 4th bar, we start with a snare and a bass drum. Boom, like that. Then we've got a rest, which means we play absolutely nothing in that 2nd count. So we go 1 and 2, and then we start playing. And then when we do the end of the 4th bar there, we play snare, tom 1, then 2 snares, and 1 tom 1 again. So we've got 8th, 8th, 16th, 8. Is what that last part sounds like. So the 4th bar sounds like this. So I didn't forget what I was playing there. I was just leaving the rest where it was supposed to be, but I wasn't counting it out loud. I was only counting out here. So this time I'll count it out loud so that we're all on the same page. Here we go. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, so those first 4 bars sound like this. And then what do we do when we hit those two dots at the very end of the bar 4? We go back to the start. Okay, we go back to find the matching dots. These two matching dots just happen to be right at the start. So we start the whole thing again. So we repeat that section. Now, I'm not going to play any of the repeats, okay? Just because I'm trying to keep this video a little bit shorter, because I'm concerned about the battery life on both this camera and this camera over here. So I'll do my best to keep it brief, although most of the time is taken up by me talking, so we'll see how well that goes, eh? So now we're on to the second section. So this is the third line, which starts with bar number 5. I'll have you'll already be able to see it, okay? I'm just explaining it so that you can see where we are on the page. Bar 5 is exactly the same as bar 1, 2, and 3. I think I might have said that this is the second section. It's not. It's still the first section. We haven't even reached the second section yet. This is just the bit after the repeat. So it does three bars of the same thing again. This. And then again, we start the next bar. So this is the 8th bar. We start that with, which is a bass drum and a snare drum. But after that, we don't do the fill like we did before, the da, 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 da. No, no, no. We do something that we haven't seen before. It's a ride cymbal. Okay? Now, some of you might not have a ride cymbal on your drum kit, which is absolutely fine. And you see it says bell. Now, each one of these things here is called a cymbal. And each one of these cymbals has a bell. Okay? It's the middle part of the cymbal, the part that's closest to where it's being held. Okay? It has a really different sound to the rest of it. That's what the middle of it sounds like. Sorry, the part where we usually play, the middle of the outside. That's kind of confusing. Okay? And then this is what the bell sounds like. Here it's a lot louder by playing the same heaviness. Weight. It's a lot louder and it cuts through a lot more. Okay, it's a lot more sudden, loud noise. So I'll just show you the difference. So hopefully you can hear the difference between those two. So this one asks for bell. So now we're going to go like this. We're going to go 1 and 2 and bell. And the next thing says rim. Now it says rim above an X, but we need to look at where the X is. And we can see that the X is on the snare line. So that means it's the rim of the snare drum. Okay? Usually when we play the snare and it's got a dot there, we'll just play it like you'd play a drum normally. You just hit it in the middle. Bam. But this one says rim. So we're playing the edge. That's the outer edge, the metal part of the drum. Like that. The best way to do that is to hold your hand flat on the drum with the stick also touching the drum head here and just hit it down like that. Okay? That has a way different sound to that. It's quite a subtle difference, but that's the noise that you really want, okay? So that bar now, we've learned a lot in just these like 3 notes. That bar, the 8th bar sounds like this. 1 and 2 and bell and rim. Okay? 1 and 2 and bell, rim. Cool. So that part there, the first 8 bars of this is the easy part. Okay? That's the easy part done. Then it starts getting a little bit harder, and then it stays pretty tricky for the last part as well. So now we're on to the second section of this sheet. Okay? That is bar number 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's a repeated section. Those 2 lines there, it's a repeated section. Now, you might see that there's 0 hi-hats. No hi-hats in this whatsoever. We are dealing with bass drum. We are dealing with floor tom. We are dealing with snare drum. We've got tom 1 and we've got tom 2. But remember that I don't have a tom 2 on my drum kit. So my tom 2, when I need to play a tom 2, is just going to be tom 1. Okay. That's going to be tom 1. It should sound... should be another tom there, but I don't have one. So tom 1 is what I'm going to be playing. So what we're going to do to try and break this rhythm down, because it's quite a cool rhythm, but it looks quite complicated when it's on the page, is we're just going to look at what the floor tom is doing, because the floor tom is the one that's holding everything together during this section. I'm just going to check that this is actually... Yeah, cool. Just making sure it's still recording. Because last video, this camera for some reason stopped recording. So this rhythm for the floor tom is 16th, 16th, 8, and then 2 8ths. Okay? Ba, 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 ba. So it does that 3 times in a row. It does it it does it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row, because it does it twice per bar. That's 1 bar, 2 bar, you get the idea, and the 3rd bar will be the same. But now we need to figure out what the other drums are doing. So we've got a bass drum on the very first floor tom, and we've got one on that last floor tom of that little section. So that's the second of the 8th notes that are by themselves. So we go bass, bass. And we're also going to put that snare drum in on that first 8th note on that second group. Is this confusing? Yeah, because it's confusing for me. So we've got 1, 2, 3, ba. So bass, snare, bass. And then the next part starts with the bass drum and floor tom again. Just does 1 bass drum at the start with the 3 floor toms. But instead of doing the snare drum this time, it does the tom 1, tom 2 thing. But remember, for me, it's just going to be 2 tom 1s. So the whole bar, this is bar 9, which repeats in bar 10, exactly the same thing, and bar 11, exactly the same thing again. It goes like this. It goes... Okay, it's quite a cool rhythm. It sounds really good faster. So that's something you can work up to, and you can just use that as like a cool muck around beat as well if you want something cool to play. Yes, good work. I don't know what I'm going on about. 9, 10, 11. Those are bars 9, 10, 11. Everything is exactly the same for those 3 bars. Then on the 4th bar there, so that's the 12th bar, the last bar of that second section, if you're keeping up with this, is floor tom and snare. Does that 4 times in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because we've got 4 8th notes. Then we've got 4 16th note snares. Then a crash with a bass drum. Now, if we haven't gone over crashes, I'll just go over really quickly. You can see the X on the line is slightly above where the hi-hat ones usually are, and it's got a line through it. Okay? And that line through it is actually just an extension of the 5 lines that everything else is drawn on. It's just that when we get a note that's high enough above the top line that we need to draw another line, we just draw another little line for that one note. Okay, they're called ledger lines, and they just go above the normal ones that we write everything else on. Okay, so the last part of that goes snare, 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 crash with a bass drum, obviously. But I can't say crash bass at the same time. Bass, bash. I guess a bash. So we go snare, 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 bash. Maybe I'll start doing that. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, bam. Cool. Now your crash cymbal on your drum kit might be over this side, okay? Which is normally where they are, and then that's where the crashes are on all the school drum kits, okay? It's over to this side, so this, I only have it in the middle here because then it's easier for me to reach with both hands, and also so I've got room to put this little cymbal here, which is actually called a splash cymbal. Splash. So we've got crash and splash. Knowledge. Everybody loves learning. Okay, so now I'm going to play that whole second section, okay? So this is bars 8, 9, 10, and... What? No, it's not. It's bars 9, 10, 11, and 12. Here we go. Now that section repeats. So after you play that crash, you wait and for the and of 4, because that crashes on the 4, and you wait for the and then you start it again. So I'm just going to go from the last bar in that section and then do the first bar of the same section, because after we do the end, we go back to the start. So this is what that sounds like. See what I mean? So after you play that crash, you've got to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right. So that's that section. That's the second section. It's now on to the third section, which is the last 2 lines. It is, so we're up to bars 13, 14, 15, and 16. It's the last 2 lines. Now these are back to doing hi-hats, snares, and bass drums. I just hit my hand quite hard. That kind of hurt. Not recommended. But some of the hi-hats have little circles around them. Now some of you know what these are. What are they? Say it out loud. I feel like Dora the Explorer. They are open hi-hats. So when you're playing those notes, we're opening the hi-hats. Might actually be quite hard to see from either camera just because of how far away that one is and the fact that that one's only top down. But as I'm hitting it, I'm opening and then closing it on the next one. Now I know that some of you who don't have drum kits won't be able to do these extra little things like play the bell or maybe play the rim or play the open hi-hats. But what we really want from all of this, just like the last ones, is that we're understanding what's on the sheet and we can translate it as best we can to what we're playing, either with our drums or with our made up drums or thinking about or whatever. Okay, just like I don't have a Tom 2, doesn't get me down. I'm not going to go, oh, I'm not going to play this whole thing because I don't have a Tom 2. Okay, I just use Tom 1. Who cares? I'm still understanding the rhythms and I'm still learning and still growing my skills as a drummer. So even if you don't have open hi-hats that open, just play them as closed ones. If you don't have hi-hats at all, just play whatever you can that's over there. If you don't have drums or you don't have sticks or you don't have whatever, you can just sit there and ear drum along. Okay? If you're moving your hands in the way that it would be like you're playing the drums, it's the best you can do without having drums in front of you. Okay? And all we're asking, especially during these kind of tricky, weird times, is for you to do your best. Simply put. So this last section, we've got some open hi-hats, some closed hi-hats. So we've got, starts with a bass drum and closed hi-hat. Then we go open. And then when we... that was really loud. So then when we close it, we play snare and bass drum together. So we go this. So those first 3 notes sound like this. 1, 2, and then we open it back up, and then do a bass drum, and then open back up, and then we do something similar to what we saw earlier on in the page, which is 4 snare drums. Remember we did that. We did this in the first section, but now we're just doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're doing 4 snares instead of 1 hi-hat and 3 snares. We're doing 4 snares with a bass drum on the first one. So that bar there, I'm going to play bar 13. Yeah, that's the first bar of the last section. And then it does that, as you can probably see, and you can probably tell by now because it's been the same way the same thing the whole way through the sheet, that we do the same bar again and then again. So we repeat that bar 3 times, essentially. So we do the same thing 3 times. This is what that sounds like. there's one thing I missed in there, and there was a sneaky crash that I've only just spotted now. So after you do the second bar, just going to make sure it hasn't been on any of the other sections. No. So after you finish the second bar of that section, you do a crash before you go to that open hi-hat. Okay, you can see how that crash has got a little line through it, and it's a little bit higher up than the normal hi-hats. Crash. Okay, I'm going to play those 3 bars again. I nearly forgot the crash again. Okay, and then after that, we've got something really simple. We've got 3 quarter note crashes. Bashes, because they're with the bass drum. So we go 1, 2, 3. And then this last thing that we have is called a flam. Now, some of you know what a flam is, probably the same bunch of people that know what the open hi-hats are. But a flam, I'll explain it again, is where you're playing 2 notes really, really close together. Okay, you're playing both hands really, really close together. Like that. You should get a really like, da-da, flam, da-da. That's why it's got like a tiny note and then a bigger note. Now this flam is, you can see on the floor tom. So we're going, but we're not just playing that, we're playing a bass drum as well. So we're going, so it's kind of like just like a big thud to finish the whole sheet off. So we're going 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's kind of a cool finish, kind of like a big flashy, lots of flashy crashes, and then to just drive it home. So that whole last section goes like this. Cool. Blam to finish. Alright, so that's the whole sheet. I'm going to go through and play the whole thing now. Remember that if you're having trouble with some of these sections, I know that they go from quite easy to actually quite difficult through that middle section and even at the end with the open hi-hats. Just rewind, yeah, go back in the video, look at whatever section you need to. The music's there, you'll have the sheet. I'll send the sheet out with the email, with the video, the emails, sorry. And yeah, and just do your best. Just do what you can. Just do your best. There's all the other videos as well you can look at. Yeah, all right. I'm gonna do the whole sheet now. Hopefully this goes all right. Like the last ones, if I stuff up, I'm just gonna go back to maybe the start of the line that I stuff up on. If I stuff up, I'm gonna have confidence with this one. I'm not gonna do any of the repeats, so I'm just gonna play the sheet from start to finish without any of the repeats. Good luck, me. Thanks, me. All right, let's go. Yeah, quite impressed with myself there. So that is grade 2 drum solo 1. That is that sheet complete. Yeah, really, if you're trying to learn this one, it's easiest to break it down into sections. Even if you're breaking the sections down into sections, that's really helpful. Like the way that we broke down the first 3 bars to get that right, and then we did the 4th bar of each little bit, because the 4th bar is generally the different one in this sheet. Yeah, so that's it for this video. Sorry if the rain noise has been too much, but I've been putting off filming this video all day just in the hopes that it would stop raining, but it hasn't, so I'm just had to go for it. Yeah, I hope you're staying safe and well. I hope you're your bubbles are still keeping well as well. And I'll see you in the next video. See you later, guys.